Today we're diving into how to track your ovulation and understand your fertility window.
These tips are going to help you to pinpoint when to try and to help make the process less overwhelming.
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Steven and this is JK. Between the two of us, we've got 25 years of experience practicing family medicine. We've also been childbirth educators for the last decade. What we're gonna go over in today's video is stuff that I learned in med school, but it didn't really hit home until we were trying to have our first kid. So we're gonna teach you all about ovulation and about the fertility window. So let's dive right in.
What is ovulation? Ovulation is the period in which a woman's follicle releases an egg, right? And so that egg is going to leave the ovary, go through the fallopian tube, and end up somewhere on the journey to the uterus where it will hopefully meet that sperm. But ovulation is the moment in which that egg gets released. Usually, if you have, a textbook menstrual cycle.
It's 28-day cycle.
Okay, a 28-day cycle, it would be 14 days in.
Yeah.
So halfway. So that first half, that's where it's getting ready, that follicle, and then it's going to release that egg on day 14. If you have, periods that are a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, that would change the day that you would ovulate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Fertility window. So the fertility window is the time period where a woman could get pregnant.
Yeah.
Basically. So ovulation has to happen. So there's two things that are needed for someone to get pregnant: an egg and a sperm.
Yes.
Right? And they got to meet, and there's a window of time because there's only a few days where the two can actually come together and form an embryo.
Yeah.
Right. So important to know, fun fact, sperm can survive inside of a woman for up to 5 days, right? That's not like all of them. It's like maybe like the super strong ones that can hang out
creme
forever.
de la creme of the sperm.
Yeah, they can live for 5 days. So most of them, we say like most of them are going to die off around day 3.
Yeah.
Right. So if that is the case, then you should plan during that fertility window to have intercourse every other day or even every day. But you want to really kind of give your body time to recuperate the sperm count. So every other day seems like a better option, just to be able to make sure that you've got more sperm swimming in there every time intercourse happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And then what's interesting is with ovulation or with that fertility window, it does start, like you said before. So I would say if you were tracking up to that 5th day before you ovulate, but then the day you ovulate, pretty much that window of fertility drops off.
Yeah, that thing closes. Bam.
Yeah, so really it's like that 24 hours after the egg was released, that's when you could meet that sperm and then it could form into the embryo. But if you miss that 24-hour window, you gotta wait for that next cycle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so if women have irregular cycles, that's kind of hard to know when ovulation happens, right? So,
of course.
So if someone has them sporadically, it's like not every 28 days or every 32 days. It's like every other month
days
or every 3 months or something like
Yeah.
that. That makes it really challenging to know when that fertility window is.
Of course.
Right.
And that's why it's even harder to get pregnant, because you don't have any type of pattern to go off of. Mm-hmm. So it's really important, if you have irregular periods, to see your doctor and try to figure out if there is any, diagnosis or underlying issue that could be causing it. Mm-hmm. That could be managed so that you at least have regular cycles if you're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And that kind of takes us to the next topic.
Yes. How do you track it?
Yeah.
What things can you use? So the first thing is basal body temperature.
Yeah, so basal body temperature is based off of this fact that when women ovulate, their temperature rises very, very slightly, but it is something that can be measured and can be seen.
Yes.
So if you want to use this technique, you have to measure your temperature every single day around the same time. And you got to use the same thermometer, the same technique, and you got to write it down.
And it has to be first thing in the morning. It really has to be, where right before you even roll out the bed, you want to take this temperature, because that's when it's going to be the most accurate.
Yeah. If you do it too late, then it can fluctuate throughout the day, like your temperature can change. So first thing in the morning, check your temperature, write it down. When you see a slight rise, and it could be like less than half of a degree in Fahrenheit, but there will be a slight rise, and that'll indicate that you ovulated. And so this technique, kind of not that great, right? Because when that rise happens, the ovulation has already happened.
Yeah, I mean, you literally would need to, if you're trying to get pregnant, you would want to try that day, because if you get that spike, that means that the egg was released.
Yeah.
But you're right, your fertility window is about to close. So it is difficult when you're using just the basal body temperature, but a great thing that you can use with that is the ovulation predictor kits.
Yeah, so ovulation predictor kit, also known as OPKs. So they are a stick that you pee on to measure a hormone that gets released in your body when you ovulate. So there's a hormone called LH. It's released by your brain.
Luteinizing hormone.
Yep, and then that tells your body to release the egg, and that's when ovulation happens. So there's a spike in that LH, and that spike kind of happens throughout the menstrual period and the menstrual cycle, but there's always an initial one.
Yeah.
And when that initial one happens, you can measure it. So when you are thinking you're going to ovulate, you can use one of these ovulation predictor kits, and you can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them at stores like Walgreens, Rite Aid, all those places. And you would, in the morning time, there's some science that says like later in the day might be better, like 10 to 12 o'clock or so in the morning. But you would pee on the stick, and it would either have like a line or a happy face to indicate that that LH surge happened. And if it happens, that means that the next day is when ovulation is going to take place.
I used the ovulation predictor kits. My favorite was always the clear blue, because you get the happy face, and it's digital, easy,
clear.
And so that was my favorite. And yeah, you can find them anywhere.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, those OPKs are great.
Yeah, and so just as like make sure it's spelled out. If you use one of those, you get a happy face. You want to get some sperm in there that day, or the following day as well. Yeah. And then the third thing is checking your cervical mucus.
Cervical mucus, obviously we have discharge throughout the whole month, but when you are ovulating, it changes. So instead of it being a normal discharge, it's going to turn into like a sticky, clear, almost like egg white substance. So the test that you would do, some women don't want to do this, but if you don't have access to get the basal body temperature thermometer or the OPKs, the cervical mucus works. You can actually just insert your fingers, 2 fingers, and you pull them out, you pull it apart, and you see if it's stretchy and it's sticky, then you definitely have ovulation. Like that's giving you the sign. So it's a really great measurement, and you can do it if you know when your fertility window is. You could do that every day and see when you get that positive test. When it's that sticky egg white, that is ovulation.
That's great. Yeah, kind of weird though too. Right, like.
But it works.
Yeah.
So if you know your body, then this is the perfect test, because you could do it at any point.
Totally. No technology needed.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then the last one is the calendar method. So this is really for women who have a very consistent menstrual cycle, and you know that you're always going to have that consistent number of days. So then you could calculate, okay, I usually ovulate day 14, so that means then I can calculate, okay, 5 days before that, let's start on day 9. Every other day, we're going to have intercourse until about day 18. And then you know you've captured that window, your fertility window, where you're probably going to hit that ovulation day.
Yeah, you want to have the sperm in there hanging out, so when the egg comes by, they can greet it and hopefully get in.
Exactly. And so definitely with the calendar method, it works if you have regular periods.
Totally.
If you do not have regular periods, these methods are very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important to, see if there's any underlying issues so that you can get a cycle that is more regular and more consistent.
Yeah. One thing about the ovulation testing kits that I forgot to mention. So because there's LH spikes that happen after the initial one, when you get that initial spike, you don't need to keep checking.
Right.
So if you got the initial one, put the rest under the sink or someplace to store them, because you're going to keep getting spikes after that. But remember, day after you get the positive, that's when you ovulate, and then the fertility and the ovulation window closes after that. So there's no need to continue checking until the following month.
And the kits are expensive, so you want to save as many of the tests as possible. That's why it's also not recommended for women who have irregular periods to use them, because you would literally be using the whole box in 1 month, testing every single day. So it's just better to have some idea when your fertility window is and use those strips only during the fertility window.
Yeah, and then there's some devices that are available now too, right? They're like wearable devices on your wrist.
The bracelets I liked them, but some women like to use the actual testing kits.
Yeah, and those bracelets, they're all checking kind of biometric measures like your temperature for you, so kind of like that basal body temperature method. It's checking your heart rate and the variability, it's checking perfusion, it's checking sleep
all
and
types of
movement,
stuff.
all that stuff. And it can actually tell you with pretty good accuracy, some of them claim up to 90% accuracy of that 5-day fertility window and when you're going to ovulate. So it takes that like consistent hard work out of the picture. So it's an automated thing, makes it a lot easier, but it costs some money.
Yeah, it does. Those are the methods of how to try to figure out when you're ovulating and when your fertility window is.
Yeah, and when to get the sperm in there and have the intercourse. So we've reviewed some of the methods that you can use to track ovulation, but what are kind of some signs that you may be ovulating?
Yeah, so 3 signs that we always look at are middle schmerz, breast tenderness, or like bloating, and then the last one, increased libido. So the first one, middle schmerz, that just has to do with pain. It's called ovulation pain. It usually is one side or the other, and it's usually the side where that follicle releases the egg, and you'll feel it. It's like a crampy sensation. Some women, they feel it every single month, and so when you feel that, that's probably the side, the ovary that released that egg, and that's why you're feeling that sensation. And then if you have like breast tenderness, if you have bloating, those are typically signs because we do have an elevated level of estrogen, and specifically for the breasts, like the tissue swells when the progesterone surges after the estrogen goes up too. So you can notice that like at certain times of the month, and that's usually when you're ovulating. Bloating is the same thing. When our estrogen rises, we get water retention. Sometimes you get gastrointestinal changes. You start to feel that. And so those are super common signs. And then the last one, increased libido. This is kind of like nature's way of, us just getting pregnant, because your desire increases with the hormone fluctuations. You want to be intimate with your partner, and it just typically happens like right before you're going to ovulate. All of a sudden you just have it. You might not have a desire any time of the month except when you're going to ovulate. But for some women, like it's like clockwork.
Well, with all of the ways to track, it's really important to just be consistent with whatever method you decide to use, because it can take a little bit of time to get used to checking your temperature every morning, get used to using the kits, to get used to checking the cervical mucus. Consistency.
Right.
Consistency will lead to better accuracy, and it's really important to be accurate when it comes to ovulation.
Yeah, and the more that you do it, it actually helps to have better accuracy, because especially if you're using apps and things like that, they're going to go with the average of several months. And so you get a better reading if you're doing it for at least 3 to 6 months, just to have a really solid idea of where your fertility window is. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tips about fertility, pregnancy, and childbirth. Check out this next video about my PCOS journey, about the challenges, lessons, and how I overcame it.
See you in the next video.